Besides outlining the mechanics for the game at hand, the purpose behind game rules is to give parameters so that everything remains fair between the players. But with that said, situations can arise that either conflict or aren't covered by the basic rules. Realizing this, some games may address any irregularities that might arise over the course of play. With that said, hats off to those who engage in such fourth-dimensional thinking. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming Blackjack. With this episode, we'll be going over irregularities, not with how government institutions are handling their finances, but regarding the game. If a card is dealt in error and its face isn't exposed, then it can be used as if it was the next card to be dealt. And if a card is drawn in error to the dealer's completed hand, it will be discarded if its face is exposed. But if a card is found face up while in the shoe, it won't be used in the game. In the situation where no cards are dealt to a player's hand, then the player's hand is considered dead. If the dealer fails to deal a second card to a player after dealing a second card to each of the other players, then the player has the option of either receiving their second card prior to the dealer looking at their whole card, or having their hand declared dead and their original wager returned to them. If, after the first two cards have been dealt to each player and a card is drawn in error with its face exposed, then the card is given to the next person in rotation as if it was the next card found within the shoe. If any player refuses to accept this card, they essentially pass, thus preventing them from accepting any additional cards for the rest of the round. And if the card is refused by all the players and the dealer is unable to use it, then the card is placed into the discard pile. In the situation where the dealer is in possession of a pat hand and they accidentally draw another card for themselves, then said card is to be placed into the discard pile. And if the dealer fails to deal either the first or second card to themselves, then they are to continue the dealing process of the first two cards to each player, followed by dealing the appropriate number of cards to themselves. After the initial deal, and before any payouts, if a card placement error occurs, then the hand is to be reconstructed. Regarding reconstruction, players can choose to continue their hand without the hand being reconstructed, continue their hand if the hand is able to be reconstructed, or to have their hand invalidated and their bet returned. If the player continues play, regardless of reconstruction, they will have to accept any subsequent cards that are dealt to them during the round. When the house reconstructs a hand, they're done with all cards that arise from dealing errors that are made during the initial deal, before any interim settlements, during any subsequent deals, and before the final settlement. The establishment also has absolute discretion when it comes to determining if cards can be reconstructed. Hands also aren't reconstructed under the following conditions. First is when either the interim or final settlement has occurred. Second is when the dealer fails to stand on a 17 or better and hits with these cards discarded and the dealer's previous point total before taking the additional card stand. And third is when the cards have been dealt to a player who hasn't bet after the interim settlement has occurred with these cards being discarded. And if during a subsequent deal that a hand has been dealt to a play area that is without a wager, then said cards that make up that hand are to be discarded. If a player notices that the dealer hasn't given themselves a first card and they possess a hand, they will decide to either complete their hand before the dealer takes their first card, or to tell the dealer to take the first card before proceeding any further. And if the dealer's first card is an ace, the players with wagers can place an insurance bet if insurance is being used. If it's noticed that the cards haven't been dealt to a player who made a wager, then said wager is void. But if only one card has been dealt to a player who made a wager, then said player has the option of either retracting their wager or receiving a second card when it comes time to decide for their given play area. If the player isn't given the option to draw additional cards, or the dealer fails to correctly act on the decision the player made, then an error has occurred and is dealt with the same way that a card is dealt in error. On top of this, any cards dealt after an error has occurred are considered to be dealt in error as well. If cards aren't shuffled after exposing the second marker, then a shuffle occurs once the round comes to an end. And if there is an insufficient number of cards remaining within the shoe to complete a round, then all cards found within the discard holder are shuffled and cut so that the dealer can complete said round. From there, another shuffle is to occur. A variant to this insufficient pile sees the first card in this reshuffling be discarded before finishing the round. If an automatic shuffler is used and it malfunctions for one reason or another, then the round is void. The automatic shuffler is covered, or an out-of-order sign is placed next to it, and shuffling is done in an alternate manner. When it comes to any wagers that occur mid-game, the results of such payments are to stand. A variant to voiding the round when multiple cards are dealt out and the order can't be determined, regardless of card exposure, sees the affected player select which card they want to receive and the other card used as the next card found in the shoe. But if this happens to the dealer, then the pit boss or higher will discard the simultaneous cards and instruct the dealer to draw a new card. The drawing of simultaneous cards can also allow the players to decide to continue playing or have their bets returned. If a player places a bet that exceeds the maximum limit and the dealer notices before betting ends, then the house will reject the given bet. But if the bet isn't rejected, then the player is to win or lose based on a pro rata basis as determined by the maximum limit. And this apportionment isn't based on the result of a pro-rated bet that is found below the minimum bet. If a player places a bet that doesn't meet the minimum limit and it is noticed by the dealer before betting closes, then the dealer is to notify the player that they'll need to raise their bet to the minimum amount or withdraw it. But if the dealer doesn't notice this before closing the bet, then the player will win or lose the bet accordingly. If a player leaves the table after making a bet and they're the only one betting, then the house will draw for the player until the player's hand reaches a point total of 12 or more, followed by settling the bet accordingly. If, during play, a technical interruption occurs that will affect the round from continuing, two options are available. First, if the outcome has been established, play will continue with the round being concluded. And second, if the outcome is yet to be established, then the round is void. In the event where a card is found that isn't part of the set of cards, the round is void. The voiding of a round also occurs when the cards haven't been shuffled. When it comes to irregularities that occur at an establishment, they will use their internal documentation to address such matters during play. With that said, dealers can make insignificant modifications to these given rules which will have to be documented. With any errors that occur during a round that weren't noticed until after the following round starts, they won't have any effect on the outcome of the given round. So with that said, that is what you need to know about the irregularities surrounding Blackjack. With that taken care of, we can start talking about variants to gameplay. If you like this episode, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode and happy gaming.